Anyway, thanks for coming, everyone. If you didn't catch, the restroom is over here to my left, and the sink is inside the barn. And we've been doing, I'll give you a little intro. We moved into this house 3 years ago, or about 3 years ago. It's a 1907 house built by Bernard Maybeck. We really love to share the house and the property, and so this is one of the ways that we're able to do that. We've been showing art in our little miniature gallery for about maybe 2.5 years or so, and it's become really wonderfully popular with real artists, but we do not snub our noses at grad students who happen to feel like they want to put their drawings in there too. So we offer artists an opening if they would like it. Not all artists want that, but for those who do, we love to just have some snacks and let them either talk about their art or just show a little bit of their life-size art. Neighbors kindly pitch in to bring things to contribute to this. Sanjak is one of my favorites because she lives down the street. She brings chai and samosas whenever she's around, and I ask her. Anyway, so without further ado, this is Ira Serkes. We've known him for almost 30 years. He helped us sell our very first house in Berkeley. We then moved to the other coasts. But when we came back to Berkeley again 3 years ago, we asked him to help us buy this house. So, anyway, here you go, Ira.
Thank you. Let's see. Oh my goodness.
Now, don't get that near your mouth.
Yeah, I gotta figure this out. How's that?
Yeah, it's good. Excellent. That's good, Ira.
Well, first and foremost, well, thank you, Andrea and Michael. The most important thing, a person in this exhibit is my muse, Carol. So I want to make sure that person's in it. And Carol's the one that looked at the photo and said, why don't you crop it this way? So if it looks great, it's all because of Carol. I'm just the guy that clicked the shutter.
From a moving bus.
From a moving bus.
Through a window.
That's hard to imagine.
And from a lens which isn't my highest quality lens, the reason why is we were traveling in Sicily and I was carrying my highest quality lens and it weighed a ton, and I finally said, I'm getting older. I can't carry this lens anymore, so I got one that's half a weight. And the astonishing thing is we blew it up, you can look at see the feet of the camels. So the original print was about as big as this, and this is just a crop that's zoomed and then updated in software. And Brian was asking about, did I use an orange filter? If you're old and use black and white film, you know, use filters to darken the sky. And I said, not exactly, but I did. Because this is using Lightroom as opposed to darkroom techniques. And I simply adjusted the orange to darken blue sky. So it's like riding a bicycle. I'm using the same things I learned 30, 40 years ago. It started with a Kodak box brownie camera at the New York World's Fair. I think it's 64, 65, or 63, 64. And the negatives are orange, and I finally bought a scanner that'll convert it back to color, which was amazing, something that's 60 years ago. And then I went into black and white, 35 millimeter roll. Back when roll your own meant something different than it does now. I'd buy 100 feet of black and white film and roll my own. The people are showing their age. I'm seeing people nodding their head. And I truly love black and white, and then went into color and slides and didn't do anything for a long time. And then in 2003, got a digital camera and from Looking Glass. So please, if you want to buy camera equipment, buy it from Looking Glass on Ashby Avenue. They won't be for us if we don't support them. And so I've been doing it and upgrading it. I got the Canon camera simply because it was incrementally lighter weight than the Canon Icon, and little did I know I'd be carrying 618 pounds of lenses on my forced march with camera. There's nothing religious about Nikon or Canon, just happened to be what I have. And if people say, what camera did you use? You know that they're not a photographer because it's not the camera. So a little bit about the photos. I'm afflicted with lunacy, which is curable, contagious, and fortunately harmless. And I used an app. I knew about the supermoon rising over the Campanile, and I used an app. It was one of the very first moon photos I took, and I didn't realize until a decade later how fortunate it was because it captured everything. So if you look at my website, which is Serkes.com for photos, you'll see a lot of moon photos. And I tend to be black and white, lunar, photography, neon, lots of neon, and these are all for people to take if you wish. But really come back to my love of black and white, and I've been published now in 5 editions of Black and White magazine. And it's really fun. And somebody asked about the difference. And when you're looking at black and white, you're looking at shapes and textures and shades. So it really is a different way to look at things. But also, there are things I've learned from our neighbors. Harold Davis lives in Thousand Oaks, and he taught a technique called HDR, black and white photography. High resolution or high definition black and white.
High dynamic range.
That's it. I'm trying to figure out what the title of the book is. And basically it's a concept of taking different exposures and then merging them in software. Now if you've seen HDR photography, it looks like something that Ansel Adams would have been forced to create if he was an indentured servant to Thomas Kincaid. But there's a way to do it so it doesn't look like that. And so these photos I took as a closing gift from Michael and Andrea are not photos. They just look like photos. What they are is this is a merger of 14 different photos. The other is a merger of 21 different photos using a special lens that changes position so that vertical lines are vertical. And then I took it 7 exposures merged together, so that's why you see the clarity you don't normally see. So I've talked about the moon, talked about that. I've been published in Berkeley side. I do lots of neon, and about a third of the places no longer exist. It's all Berkeley. That's why the Hotsy Totsyville, I wanted to put it in here. It's in Albany, so I couldn't do that. And then I'm published in Berkeley side, and what else can I say? Oh, this. Take one of these. Carol and I are really fortunate. We get to work with lots of really nice people selling and buying homes. And so what that means is we get to give back also. So if you get one of the neon prints, we donate for proceeds to Berkeley Humane Society. And if you use a fountain print, we donate it to Friends of Fountain. So feel free to just go ahead and do it. And it's really fun to do. I can probably talk more, but I won't. So let me open it up if people have questions or would like me to talk more about something else.
Could you explain again? So 17 different exposures, huh?
So the exposures, now bring you back to yesteryear. You're with Ansel Adams in Yosemite Park hiking. I would never be hiking, but I can imagine myself with Ansel Adams. And it's a big bellows camera on a giant tripod. Remember the bellows cameras? You can adjust the lenses up and down. And what that does is it lets you change the composition. So if I took a picture like this, the line would look like this and that. It would be converging. What the bellows camera does is it changes it so that the vertical lines stay vertical. That's the first thing, and you can just do it vertically or horizontally. So imagine I had the camera setting here, the lens, took 7 exposures, moved the camera this side, took 7 more, moved the lens this side, not the camera but the lens, just everything's on the tripod. And then I click one button in Lightroom and said, pull it all together. And it recognizes that it's 3 different positions, and it recognizes that each position is 7 exposures. And in about 10 seconds with my new faster computer, pulls it all together. It's nothing short of magic.
And he spent all that time in the house before we owned it.
Yeah.
Would have to like he would close the light source, right, and move it, and then open it up
Well,
again.
you know,
like how did Ansel Adams
I'll
do
let you.
it
I
with
think
the
I have the
photos?
camera in the car, so I'll go get it if I do. It's actually, it's really simple. You put the tripod down, you put the camera on it. I have a special tripod top, which is fine adjustments, and then you just simply go, and you slip. You move. You physically move a part of a lens to the left or right or up and down. It's as simple as that.
But it's not like the exposure isn't happening while you're doing the movement. because
No.
Yeah, you would like so you'd stop it.
Yeah, now I do that with some neon photography where I'll change it to a very low sensitivity and a very small opening, and I'll actually change the exposure of the zoom while I'm exposing, and you get different effects.
Yeah, and then you get the trails. And
Yeah, you get trails, and that's kind of fun,
Yeah.
but not with this. It's all stationary.
I think what you meant with Ansel Adams was about tilting, shifting the lens to make the verticals, but you weren't meaning that he was merging all these different images
That-
of
yeah,
all these
that-
negatives.
Well, let me put it this way. If Ansel Adams were alive today, I absolutely know he'd be using Lightroom.
yeah.
But he
And
wasn't. I think that was what you misunderstood.
Yeah.
He wasn't taking the different.
No.
Okay, on the same exposure.
Right.
yeah, no, that was some people
But he
might
was doing something a little bit like that in the zone
This
system.
is an amazing thing. I'm sitting there. I got a bunch of books from the Albany Library on Ansel Adams. So I'm reading the books, seeking inspiration. And he says he took this picture of Lone Pine, Mount Whitney being lit up at sunrise from Lone Pine with a little horse in lower. It's a fabulous photo. And then he says, some enterprising youths from Lone Pine High School went in and painted an L and a P on the mountain, and it shows on every photo you see, and it really is terrible looking. So what I did is I took the negative and I blocked it out. In effect, he was using Photoshop in darkroom. He got rid of it. I said, well, if it's good enough for Ansel Adams, it's good enough for me. And then he went further. He says, and then when I print it, I block it out so it doesn't get light, so it's not exposed. So it was a real revelation. With Ansel Adams, he was no purist. And it was really made me feel good to see. So I called my friend, who's my mentor, and said, you taught me that raw. It took me 3 years to figure that out. Thank you. And I finally decided that I'm not a documentary photographer. I'm taking pictures for me. So it's okay to use Lightroom to block out cranes and other stuff because it's my photo. It's not for National Geographic. And I want to let you know, if people remember, no pyramids were moved in this photo as what happened in National Geographic in 1980 when they were dinged for cutting and pasting and moving the pyramids so that it would fit the cover better. That pyramid did not move when I took the photo. Any other questions? Well, feel free to hit me up too. Anything else? Well, thank you.